Sorry ahead of time for any format issues. I'm posting this from my cell phone. So for context, I'm a 22-year-old male, and I live in a large city in the Midwest. Now, I drive for Lyft while putting myself through trade school. I drive for other similar companies, but that's besides the point. I have many horror stories from all those, but I'll tell those another time. It was Christmas Eve 2020. I was out running Lyft for a few hours before heading to my mom's with my new baby and wife. Nothing special going on that night, just the usual. I get a ride request. It was a pickup from this kind of lower income apartment complex. No big deal. I arrive and I find my passenger. He has all his belongings, several boxes of stuff. Now, my car's a 2006 Chevy Impala, so it's not too big. We get all his stuff loaded up, barely, and are on our way. During the ride, he's crying saying his girlfriend was cheating on him, and he had walked in on them earlier that night. He couldn't stay there because it was her name on the lease, so I was taking him to a hotel. Now, in my city, we have a street that is well known for vices, hookers, drugs, gangs, weapons, and shady motels. The works. We get to the motel that is in that part of town, and he asked me to wait for him to check in and get his key. No problem, man, I say. I'll confess, I break the rules a little bit when it comes to Lyft. I have a gun hidden in a concealed holster, secured to the underside of my driver's seat for protection. Reason being, driving Lyft and other contract apps, I've had knives and guns pulled on me, as well as had people try to fight me, rob me, and all kinds of other things, but like I said, another time. Since this motel was on the street that I mentioned before, homeless people were everywhere. There was a dude on the far corner of the complex that had a needle still in his arm, passed out against the building. And I'm a fan of true crime and horror narration, so I'm on edge. He gets his key. The whole motel is ground level, so to help the guy out, I drive to his door. As I mentioned before, we had a lot of stuff, so I started to help him unload his stuff. While on my second trip of getting stuff, I saw a guy come out of a room just to the south of my car, followed by two ladies. They came to the room I was next to, not my passenger. One of the ladies pounded on the door, then opened it. That's when I saw in the room a guy raise a fucking shotgun out of his long coat and stormed into the room. The two ladies followed him, slamming the door behind them. Following, I heard a lot of yelling and shouting. I was just waiting for shots to ring out. Out of nowhere, my passenger came behind me. "I can take this, man. Go ahead and take off. Have a Merry Christmas." And he gave me a cash tip. I didn't even notice he took the boxes out of my hands or slid $5 into my pocket. I was frozen. I knew what may have been going on in that room. I had to leave, or at least get to where I could get my gun. I know the guy and both ladies saw me, and I know they knew I saw the gun. I had to get out of there. You know, no witnesses. I got in my car and sped away quickly. I got a block or so away and called the cops. I gave them every detail. After I got off the phone with the police, I signed out of Lyft. I hadn't made much money, but I was done. I got a call later that night. The cops investigated. They never found the gunman or the woman. They never answered the door I saw them come out of. And the occupants of the room they went into said they had nothing happen. Well, I know what I saw. So to the gunman I saw with the shotgun, who I'm sure was trying to make a statement to someone about debt, let's not meet again. I have other creepy encounters as well that I might post here, but I'll write this one first since it's the most current one. It happened about 2 hours ago, and I'm still contemplating whether or not I should call the cops. First off, you need to know that I live in a poor Eastern European country, in a big city, but in a bad neighborhood. At least that's what I've been told. I've actually never encountered any creepy individuals that would want to do any harm. Just your usual vandals and troublemakers, never anyone serious. I'm also still a teenager and live with my parents, but growing up in this environment, I consider myself to be quite street smart. This was a feature that helped me whenever I was in trouble. It turned out to be pretty useful today. At about 3 p.m., my dad left for ping pong practice, and I knew he'd be back at about 8. He would usually go out for a beer with his friends afterwards to chill. And coincidentally, my older brother and mom left to help one of her friends clean up the place after a New Year's party. It was New Year's Day. I should have came along, but today I felt sick and decided I should just really stay in. In reality, I was very hungover, but my mom doesn't know that. I was probably the luckiest I've ever been. You'll find out why in a minute. So all of my family leaves except for me. Naturally, I've been home alone before, so that doesn't really make me uneasy at all. But having been a long-time reader of this subreddit, I take more precaution than I used to. Like check to see if the door is closed, turn off the lights when not needed, etc. The evening goes by just like any other. I'm rewatching episodes of Skins, the UK version when suddenly I feel the urge to go get a snack. Just behind my apartment complex, there was this very well-known supermarket on which I always rely on whether I'm in deep need of a snack. So that was like a 5-minute walk. I put my coat on and some flip-flops and I'm out. It's freezing outside and I could see the bright lights of the supermarket in the distance. But something was off. In front of the automatic doors there was a small, robust figure. As I got closer, I could distinguish his face. It was this man whose face I've never seen before. I remember him on countless occasions roaming around our blocks of flats, but never actually thought anything of it. He was dressed poorly and was staying in front of the doors as if he was guarding them. I asked if the supermarket was still open, and he pointed at the paper which was clipped near this schedule. It said it closed at 6 p.m. due to the holiday season, it being New Year's Day. It was 6:20 p.m. I let out a sigh and wanted to turn around to go home, but he told me in an alarmed voice that there was a very close corner store next to the supermarket. I told him that I didn't need anything important and that I would just come back tomorrow, but he kept on insisting and said it was a 2-minute walk from there. All the while, he was staring at me in a weird manner. It was the first red flag, but I found a logical explanation in my mind, thinking that maybe this guy was just very eager to help me. Maybe so I'd just give him some money. That sort of made sense in my mind, but I was still alert. So I walked to the corner store and took whatever I could find fastest, paid, wished the shop owner Happy New Year, and left in a hurry. As time passed, I was getting more and more nervous for some reason. I guess it was just my gut telling me that something was off. What really made me switch was the fact that I'd been gone for about 5 minutes, and as I was passing the supermarket, the guy who was usually roaming the area was nowhere to be seen. At that point, I started jogging towards my apartment, all the while trying to calm myself and imagining a plausible explanation as to why this guy was there no more. I got to the bottom of the stairs of the front door, and in the distance, I'm short-sighted, I noticed a tall figure entering the elevator at the same time, almost planned. The automatic light switched off. I desperately ran towards the interphone and clumsily got my keys to open the door. As I ran to the elevator, it was still running. I live on the 7th floor. I could see it up to the 3rd, then the 4th, then the 5th, then it stopped. I let out a big sigh of relief, but was still skeptical, so I took the stairs. As I was walking up the stairs, almost laughing, I noticed that above me, the light on the 6th floor was on. That was a bit alarming, but I kept on walking. Suddenly, I saw the light on the 7th floor turned on and I stopped, looked above, and hoped whoever it was would go to the 8th floor. A minute passed, which felt like hours, and the light on the 7th floor was still on. I decided to take action, so I ran all the way to my floor, and I saw something that almost made me pass out. The tall, dark figure was kneeling at my doorknob, trying to what I presumed to be lockpick my door. In these kinds of situations, I rarely got angry. I just want whatever is going on to stop. So from afar, I shout very weak, "Hey!" at the guy. In an instant, he turns around and stands up. I see him for a split second, and he looks fucking terrified. Long black trench coat, a hat, and leather gloves. He smiles at me and reveals his yellow, unkept teeth. He fucking smiles at me. Do you know that stomach-turning feeling when you stumble upon something that is so scarily out of this world and wrong that you just cannot look away, but you want to? That was that, amplified to by, like, 1,000. I was shitting my pants, and, to my surprise, the man took off running. Before he reached the stairs, he mumbled a "sorry" and ran away. I was still in shock and couldn't follow him or call the police, or even move for that matter. I easily got to the door of my apartment and noticed that there was a pen stuck in there. Yep, he was definitely trying to get into my house. Who knows what he wanted to do. My parents won't be back for about 2 more hours. I'm not sure if I should tell them or even call the cops. Thinking in retrospect, I think this tall man and the man in front of the supermarket may have conducted a plan. It would have been all too convenient for him to catch me off guard like that. Either way, it's a scary thought. One more thing is for certain. I'll be keeping a bat in my room from now on. So much for New Year's resolutions. So tall, dark man that wanted to enter my home uninvited. Let's not meet. Edit. I've called my parents first, and While they were away, they said they'd get home ASAP and told me to call the cops right there after they hung up. And they told me to make sure all the doors were locked, and also that they'd call a neighbor from the second floor, a very nice old lady, to keep me company until the police arrives. I've talked to the officer and explained the situation and also showed him the lockpick, and he took it as evidence. I also gave a detailed description of the man from the supermarket, and I tried to describe the lockpicker himself, but that was still in a blur. He said he'll leave some of his men to patrol the area. I was lucky he was very nice about it. Police here usually aren't. So when I was about 7 or 8-ish, my parents took me to a Christmas market that had tons of activities for kids. I didn't know this at the time, but my parents were fighting and this preoccupied and just mostly left me on my own. The way it worked was you bought some tickets at the door and then you could go inside and use one ticket for one activity. There was stuff like baking cookies, painting stuff, wood burning for older kids, etc. It was pretty fantastic. Some of the stuff had lines if there was a lot of interest. Now, I'd gotten about 10 tickets, and an activity was about 15 minutes. My parents were in the cafe in the building, but well out of sight, since it was an area where you could get into if you're accompanied with a kid, or were a kid. I guess they felt safe leaving me alone. This was allowed, but not encouraged. Anyway, I was lining up for my favorite activity there, the fabric printing section, where you got this piece of linoleum and could draw Christmas patterns and stuff on it. It was already my third time, but whatever, right? In the line, I was about halfway to the entrance. Someone grabbed my arm. I panicked immediately because my parents would never touch me like that, and I knew nobody else there. I yelped and tried to pull away, but couldn't. Turning, I saw it was an older lady, maybe 40s to 50s. I'm still not sure. She was well dressed, looking pretty strict but normal. Anyway, she was pulling me out of the line against my will. I tried to yell and ask her to let me go, but she said something like, "You always do this. Come on, Marie." My name is not Marie, not even close. I kept on yelling, still thinking that she was just confusing me for someone else. I was a pretty average looking girl with a brunette ponytail, nothing particularly special, nor were my clothes. She looked down at me again, scoffed, and told me to stop throwing a tantrum and that we were going home. It was at that exact moment that I realized if I didn't escape, she would take me away. So I just basically opened my mouth and screamed at the top of my lungs. Not words, just a screech. Before that, I'd mostly just been asking to be released, loud but not full on screaming. I guess I was a polite kid. She paused mid-step because clearly I'd startled her, but didn't let go yet, so I just screamed about the only thing I could really make sense of. My name is Sam. This was the first time that people actually looked at us as more than a mom or a grandma and a kid in a tantrum, because I'm clearly too old to not know my name, and also visibly scared. I was still trying to pull away and she had a grip on my forearm like a vice. I made eye contact with the first person I saw looking over, a guy, early 30s I guess, definitely younger than her. I just pled for him to help me, and he actually came over at that point. We were in the sight of the exit. She dragged me quite far, and I guess at that point she decided it was too much of a hassle and let me go, since I'd been fighting her. I immediately slammed into the ground, which actually prompted more people to step up to me and help. I was sobbing, and as soon as I could get on my feet, I ran the other direction to my parents. I must have barreled into like 10 or more people on the way to where I knew my parents were. There was a cafe, like I said, and they were in the middle. My mom has super recognizable fake red hair, so even sobbing, I could make her out easily. I banged into the table, knocking stuff off, and just threw myself at my mother. I was in no state to explain, and she was both mad at me for making a scene and really fucking worried because I was not the type of kid to cause a disturbance, pretty much ever. I wanted to explain but couldn't. There was a bit of commotion around, with people being noisy, but as I calmed down, I realized that the guy I had begged for help was explaining to my parents what happened. I haven't even noticed him come with, but I kind of tuned in when he kept on asking if my grandma was here or something, and that if I could have known that woman, and asking if they knew who she was. Obviously, my mother confirmed that that was not the case, and asked if what he'd told her was right. He confirmed that some woman was dragging me off, calling me Marie. My parents, the guy, and his son, who was a fair few years older than me, maybe 15 or so, went to the security, where I tried and failed to describe the lady. The guy had a much better description of her, but obviously she was long gone. I think they called the police, but I never spoke to any cops that I can remember. I felt really awkward and sorry that I ruined the other kid's day there, so I gave him the rest of my tickets so that he could do more stuff that he wanted. He was really nice and gave me a pack of cookies he baked to eat while the adults were talking. I don't remember any of their names or anything, but I remember how grateful I was to the kid, more so than his dad even. It just really comforted me that I had another kid around who was nice. Anyway, my parents took me home ASAP, of course, and we never went to that place again. There was a short story in the newspaper the next day about a kidnapping scare my mother told me some years later, but it was all just a speculation, and they didn't even confirm in the paper if it was an attempt or just a misunderstanding. Well, sure as shit it wasn't a misunderstanding. They never caught the lady, or did any follow-ups, as far as I'm aware at least. I actually had bruises on my arm where she gripped me through my sweater. I don't like Christmas markets much anymore.